Coming up on The Daily with me, Neil Patterson, Sky News has had an exclusive interview with Iran's foreign minister. So what have we learned?
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kellner.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100, every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi everyone, we are heading to Iran today, specifically the capital Tehran, because it's there that our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn got the chance to interview the country's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi. And Mr. Araghchi had plenty to say about Israel and Gaza, of course, but also lots about the American president. Donald Trump and Iran certainly have previous. It was Trump who pulled out of the Iranian nuclear deal, leading to its collapse. Now, the idea had been to get Iran to promise to limit its production of enriched uranium, the stuff that makes nuclear bombs go bang. In return, they'd get relief from international sanctions. But it was not to prove so. Thanks to the president, the deal went up in a puff of smoke, though recently he has sounded a bit more open to dialogue. Dominic Waghorn joins us from Tehran. Dominic, great to have you with us. How surprised were you to get the call? It's not every day that you get a sit-down interview with the Iranian foreign minister.
The Iranian government ministers tend not to give many interviews to foreign media, and the ones they do tend to be outside of Iran when they're on their travels. So I think it was a surprise that we're invited here to some extent. I think it reflects to some extent the sense we have of the Iranians that they feel they've had a very bad year, both in terms of what's happened in the region, but also domestically, economically. They see someone coming into the White House who has been their arch nemesis, Donald Trump, and therefore they feel they need to get their message out. I mean, I was last here in 2017. I've tried to get back in, and Sky's tried to get teams into Iran since then. And so it's a combination of our efforts, the efforts of our editors, lobbying the Iranian government and persuading them that it is worth us coming here to do journalism. And then they offered this interview with the foreign minister, and clearly he had things to say.
OK, so Araghchi had things to say, in your view, Dom, but is he saying them on behalf of Iran? I mean, I suppose what I'm asking is just how senior a figure is he within the Iranian government?
Well, he's a very senior figure. And to explain, for those who don't really understand very complicated Iranian politics, at the top of it, you've got the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who is pretty ill and old, but still, we think, retains overall control. But beneath him, there are lots of different agencies and levels in government. But there are sort of various factions. You've got the hardliners, who are the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. They're the kind of the guardians of the principles of the revolution in 1979. Then you've got the reformists and those who want to see some kind of change for Iran to reform itself. And Abbas Araghchi is interesting because he is originally a member of the IRGC. He's conservative, but he's more pragmatic. He's seen as more pragmatic. So he kind of straddles both camps. And so he is someone who has an authority and an influence within the government, and therefore what he says really counts.
Do you know what? Seems an appropriate time for us to have a listen then. Here is part of your interview with the Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi.
We, of course, do not respond to the language of threat. This is a fact, and we have proved it in the past. But we do respond to the language of respect.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because on the one hand, Donald Trump pulled out of the nuclear deal that took so long to negotiate, and he's done things that have been very hostile to Iran. But at the moment now, he's saying a deal with Iran would be nice, to use his words. So Donald Trump appears to want to move on. Is Iran prepared to move on as well and negotiate with America under his presidency?
I'm not denying the possibility of a new deal or a new round of negotiations. But I want to refer you to a fact that we have now much more mistrust compared to the previous time.
But he is now saying he wants a deal, and a deal would be nice. If he approaches you with respect, will you negotiate with him?
No, I'm not rejecting that. I want to say that now there is much more mistrust between us. And we have to overcome that mistrust first. And there should be enough confidence for Iran to once again engage into negotiations. And I think we are still a bit far from that. As I said, we are waiting to hear. Yes, have a deal is nice, of course, but what kind of a deal?
You said towards the end of last year, we believe the window for diplomacy is still open, albeit for a short time, provided the other parties demonstrate genuine willingness. Without such commitment, we will pursue an alternative course. Now, that has caused concern in the West. Can you explain what do you mean by an alternative course? Because many people say it means Iran possibly pulling out of the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. Is that what you meant?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know what would be the alternative. But I can explain. And I think you would understand that we tried the path of negotiations and confidence building in our peaceful nuclear program. But then it turned into a bad experience. Sanctions came back. So what is that alternative? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, because it is under consideration. It is, and I have to be honest with you, there is a hot debate going on in Iran about that alternative. Yes, there are debates, and debates are very hot at all levels, even in the streets among ordinary people.
But in government, what are people saying? You've got some people saying pursue diplomacy, and the others, what are they saying?
There are different points of view. I don't know which one would prevail at the end, but the debate is going on.
Can we move on to Israel? We've heard from Israel's foreign minister saying there's been no better time for Israel to strike Iran. Iran's at its weakest. And Donald Trump has said he's prepared to support Israel in that if a deal can't be done. How worried are you by that prospect?
Well, this is not a new threat. And they know that this is not a real threat, because they know our capabilities to respond. And we have made it clear that any attack to our nuclear facilities would be faced with an immediate and decisive response. But I don't think they will do that crazy thing. This is really crazy. And this would turn the whole region into a very bad disaster. I don't even want to talk about that. Why? Because I think this is not a real threat.
And on that subject, on the subject of Israel, the Palestinians and Gaza, Donald Trump yesterday said that one option could be cleaning out Gaza. He proposed that, and the Palestinians moving somewhere else. Is that a red line for Iran? I mean, if that was to happen, what would Iran do?
Well, I think this is a project many people tried to do in the past, but they have all failed. You know, Palestine cannot be deleted from this region, and Palestinians cannot be expelled. So my suggestion is something else. Instead of Palestinians, try to expel Israelis. Take them to Greenland, so they can kill two birds with one stone. So they can resolve the problem in Greenland and Israelis. So it would be a good place for them.
You don't think the Israelis have a right to live in what they regard as their homeland?
Well, everybody has the right to live, but nobody has the right to occupy others' lands. And this is the land of Palestinians, and Palestinians should decide for their land and their destiny.
In the last year, we've seen Hamas weakened, we've seen Hezbollah massively weakened, we've seen the death of Hassan Nasrallah, a close ally of Iran's, we've seen Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas leader, assassinated here in this very city. We've seen your ally Bashar al-Assad toppled from power. Is it fair to say that your strategy is just not working, that you need to have a complete rethink about how you operate in the region?
So can I answer this in Parsi?
I believe that the resistance has been rendered several serious blows, but we have to know that resistance is a school of thought. It is a cause that is still alive and it is still there and is breathing. That is true. Hamas and Hezbollah have been damaged, but at the same time they are rebuilding themselves. And because, as I said, this is a school of thought, this is an idea, this is a cause, this is an ideal that will always be there.
Well, Dominic, I mean, quite where to start with that. Wide-ranging an interview it certainly was. I mean, let's just talk about the timing of this. This happening so close to Donald Trump becoming president again. I mean, that's not a coincidence.
I don't think it is, no. And I think they see in Donald Trump both a danger but also a potential opportunity. On the one hand, this is somebody who pulled America out of the Iranian nuclear deal, a deal that was negotiated for long, tortuous years, culminating in 2015. He just reneged on the deal. But on the other, this is a president who's gone into the White House saying he thinks another deal with the Iranians would be nice. And he's fired some of those hawks who in his first administration were advocating military action against Iran. And he's appointed people who seem to be more pragmatic, and he seems to be instructing them to explore diplomatic opportunities with the Iranians. So given that, I think Araghchi and others like him are trying to get their message out there as well. So this was his first interview since Donald Trump's inauguration. And the message was sort of double-edged. On the one hand, he is warning both America and Israel if they were to strike Iran, they could expect a formidable reaction. He says, actually, it would be a crazy idea. He doesn't actually take the threat very seriously. But he said in response to that reference to it being a nice idea, that he is listening. And I pushed him quite hard on, if he likes what he hears, will the Iranians then respond? Will they do a deal with their arch nemesis, someone who is seen as a deal maker? And he wouldn't go that far. And he stressed that there is a debate in the Iranian government, as there is amongst the people, as to whether the diplomacy has been a complete waste of time. But, I think that the thing that people will be leaping on is the fact that he's saying that Iranians are prepared to listen to Donald Trump. And if they hear the right language, a language of respect, as he said, they will respond to it. So it's a glimmer of hope, I think.
A glimmer. We're not yet at the point, presumably, of saying, let's hit the reset button on the United States relationship. But warm words between a senior figure in the Iranian government and the United States president, that has to be seen as a positive.
Yes, certainly sign of progress, but no one is underestimating the huge challenges ahead. The fundamental point for the Iranians is they were badly burned last time, and it's going to take a lot more than nice words and words saying the word nice for them to come round and go back into negotiations with the Americans.
What insight, Dom, did we get into the Iranian state's view of Israel? Israel, of course, the US closest ally in the region.
Well, he was very dismissive of the threat that he feels that Israel poses to Iran. Now, people who've looked at what Israel did in response to Iran's missile attacks last year say that Israel has effectively demolished or decimated Iran's air defence systems, and therefore would have the ability to range, its jets could range over Iran for hours and take out its nuclear facilities bit by bit. Now, he is dismissing that threat. He's saying that he doesn't actually believe there is a threat from the Americans or the Israelis because it would be crazy to do so. He said it could lead to, in his words, a very bad disaster for the region. The response from the Iranians will be so formidable that they'll have to think twice about the threat. So I think he's playing that down, but clearly the Iranians do feel that this has been a very difficult year for them. And whatever they're saying in public, whatever their bluster, they know the Israelis are a threat, and they're really concerned, I would say, by the threat of that being combined with support from America. So they certainly, I think, see a margin in pursuing diplomatic progress, if it's possible.
Did you detect any sign from Abbas Araghchi that he accepted that as a regional power, this has been a difficult time, that they have seen their reach, their power diminished? Well,
I put it to him that, he has seen in this year allies and friends assassinated or toppled from power, and Hamas and Hezbollah have been weakened. What he said about Hamas and Hezbollah was, yes, they had been damaged, but he said that resistance, as he called it, is actually a spirit, it's an idea, as well as a fighting force. And in that respect, it had not been damaged or destroyed. In fact, it was going to be rebuilt and renewed by the struggle that Hamas and Hezbollah have seen over the last year. But I think independent observers are looking at Iran and they're saying that the whole strategy they've had seems to be collapsing like a deck of cards. So while Iranians are not admitting it in public, and you wouldn't expect them to do so, they must be thinking that a change of strategy is required, both, I think, in terms of what they're doing across the region, but also domestically, because the economy here is on its knees. Inflation's at pushing 50%, youth unemployment is around 20%. The currency in the last week here has just gone through the floor. And talking to ordinary Iranians, that's what is motivating them most. They are losing hope. And this is a regime that lost a lot of legitimacy because of the protest led by women a couple of years ago. And therefore, although they're not saying it in public and they're trying to project strength in public, they must be aware that both domestically and foreign policy, they need to have a complete rethink.
Thanks, Dom. We will be back with Dominic in just a moment to hear what ordinary Iranians are actually thinking.
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kelnick.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100, every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Dom Waghorn, our international affairs editor, is on the Daily today, joining us from Tehran, where he has been sitting down with the foreign minister. But Dom, look, can we just move away from the government for a moment and speak about Iran and Iranians more generally? I mean, compare and contrast with your last visit 8 years ago.
It does seem even poorer. It does seem to be more desperate economically, and it is a sense of hopelessness. So if you talk to Iranians on the street and in the bazaars, as we have over the last few days, they are pretty shy about talking on camera. A couple of people were prepared to talk about just the economy. And what they describe, I think, really sums up the mood of despair amongst particularly young Iranians. How do you feel about the future in Iran?
In Iran, I can say that about the inflation, we can see that day by day the prices goes up. And unfortunately, it's not a good news. And all young generation, they're worried about this situation. You feel depression. You can see the people here. All of them are sad. Unfortunately, they don't have any hope.
So there is that sense of hopelessness. But the other, the impression you get also is just one of extraordinary potential. Iran is, I've only been here twice, it is one of my favourite countries. And that's really because of its people. The people here are incredibly friendly, incredibly hospitable and welcoming. It has enormous potential, natural resources, mineral wealth. The place we were filming this morning in the north of Tehran, outside a stunning mosque with amazing sort of turquoise blue dome and gold minarets. And up in the mountains we could see the ski lifts. I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear that you can ski in Tehran. So it has enormous diversity and enormous potential and a real sense of frustration amongst its people, who are very educated, very aware of that, and very proud of their history and civilization, that all of that is being massively stymied by the situation. They blame their government, many of them, but they also blame the sanctions. And they are desperate to see some kind of progress towards some kind of rapprochement with the West that could see another deal happen and see those sanctions lifted and see them able to engage more in the world.
Yeah, and just to wrap things up then, Dom, You'll be leaving Tehran shortly, a place that you said is one of your favourite countries on earth, having only been there, cumulatively for a handful of days. Do you think this is a country that can do business with the rest of the world beyond its more traditional partners? Genuinely, on the basis of your conversation with Abbas Araghchi?
Yes, it's got huge potential, but the politics are, at the moment, impossible to circumnavigate. You've got a conservative Islamist government that feels threatened at home and very much abroad, that is determined not to give in to outside pressure. And they are deeply, deeply suspicious of what Donald Trump is planning and what Israel is planning in the region. The Iranian government does not believe Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state. That's a fundamental problem, obviously, for the Americans and the Israelis. So if there's going to be any progress, it's going to need incredibly constructive and creative diplomacy. I think what we've seen today is a deliberate expression of conciliation to some extent by the Iranians. We're hearing language which is certainly coming some of the way towards Donald Trump. And there is a glimmer of hope there that they will certainly listen to what they're hearing from the White House, but you really can't overstate the challenges ahead. It's going to be hugely challenging if any of this is to lead to meaningful diplomatic progress.
Thanks, Dom. And to hear more of his thoughts on that interview, just head to the website skynews.com. And if you don't already, please do follow the Sky News Daily. You'll find a button to click wherever you get your podcast. It really does help us out. But that is your lot for today. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kellner.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100 every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.